auspicious time for you, and I hope that you really have an opportunity to connect with your ancestors. I thought that I'd make this little video this year just maybe to support you in connecting more deeply with your ancestors. First of all, just to say that there are many of us that don't even know who our ancestors are. Some of us don't even know what lands they come from. I'd suggest the place to start is maybe with a DNA test. There's lots to choose for and lots to research out there, so it's a good place to start. When things begin to open up, I would also really suggest, once you know where your people are from, to return to the land of your ancestors. Make it a priority. I've done this on several occasions over the last 10 years or so, and I have just really noticed how much healing, way too much for one video on Samhain to go into that, but definitely that has been profound for me. The other thing with your ancestors is to always hold an intention to connect with your helping and loving ancestors. We really live in a death-denying culture, and many of the ceremonies and practices of connected to death and dying that our ancestors would have had many generations ago have disappeared with the medicalization of death. So, what that has meant is that sometimes the journey for those ancestors may not have been, it might still be in process, is the best way to say it. So when we set an intention to connect with ancestors, and we say that we want to connect with ancestors who are helping, loving ancestors. Generally, these ancestors, many generations back, and I know through my teachers, almost the further back, the better. So that's just something to keep in mind. It's also really important to remember, especially at this time of the year, that we talk a lot about the veil being thin. The reality of life is that we are all connected, and everything is connected to everything else. And often we just think of ancestors as our blood ancestors, but there are many lineages of ancestors that your soul would have been connected to over the years or over your lifetimes. So, to think about your ancestors in a much more general term can be helpful. There can be star ancestors from other places that you may have lived, in other lifetimes you may have lived. There can be earth ancestors. Generally, even though I'm living on the unceded, stolen territory of the Tsleil-Waututh people, in Port Moody in British Columbia, Canada, I've lived here long enough that I feel as though there's a deep connection, for example, to the trees. That's a community that I'm very connected to. And on some level, there is also an ancestral connection for land that was once here that is no longer here, for example. Also think about your animal companions. Some of my animal companions that spent a long time with me their whole life, they've transitioned to the other side now, but they're definitely present. I want to just talk briefly about the veil and what that means to me. Yes, it is a seasonal sacred threshold. It is this moment of moving out of the light half of the year into the dark half of the year. But for me personally, I really experience this veil thinning as more about a veil that we create that is a veil of illusion. And we walk around in the majority of our life thinking that, that the ancestors are out there somewhere in this other place and that we're here. And that, there's this big veil there. But that's an illusion. It's the same illusion of separation that we walk around with every day, that I'm separate from you and you're separate from me. It's the same veil of illusion that we live in, where we think that our mind and our body are separate. We know that they're not. So this veil, the veil thinning, it helps me to remember that this illusion that I have, that, you know, my ancestors are in some other place, it's an illusion. And they're here with me all the time. Which leads me to just touch in briefly about working with an ancestral altar. I have an ancestral altar in my kitchen. Those people who have worked with me and who have been students for a long time, I hope that they know that, you know, my intention in bringing animism and sharing animism with people is that we begin to get connected and less hung up on formality. I'm not saying that in our spiritual practice that we don't have reverence in the way that we come to ceremony or the way that we come to ritual, but I do think, for me anyway, you know, growing up Catholic and growing up in, you know, formal religion, that what that kind of, some of the leftovers of that are related to, you know, that we only are spiritual at certain times of the year. We only access our spirituality in a certain setting and in a certain way, and that we have to be very pious about doing that, and that this is how you pray and this is how it's done. And that's just not been my experience over the last 25, 30 years of being on the path of animism. The longer and more deeply I am on that path, and the more deeply connected I become, what I'm really saying when you know, I'm saying that I'm deeply connected, I'm just saying I'm more intimate. I'm more intimately connected with spirit. I'm more intimately connected with earth. I'm more intimately connected with the cosmos and with my ancestors. And when we're intimately connected with people, for example, the conversation and the exchange has a beautiful flow to it, includes vulnerability and deep sharing, and it includes a lot of affection. So I have an ancestral altar that I keep in my kitchen next to my coffee maker, and I have pictures there of my ancestors and a little tray and a little cup. And in the mornings when I make my tea or make my coffee, I make them a cup and I talk to them. And some days I'm just like, hey, I'm in a super hurry and I've got to get out the door and sorry. And other days I am sharing very deeply of everything that is going on in my life and the hardest things that I'm going through. And then I sit and I wait and I listen for a response. So that is a daily practice in my life, that it would just be the same as if my Nana was sitting here in my kitchen with me. However, Samhain is a different thing, and I've posted a little video after this, or added on to this. But my ancestral altar Samhain this year is November 6th, so I'll keep this up till about November 10th. I have pictures of my ancestors on both my mother's and father's side that I'm very grateful to have. But I also have pictures of my really dear friends who have passed away. And it gives me an opportunity to, just look in their eyes every day. And then I have many little dishes on here of foods that I know that they would love, and perfumes, for example. My grandmother loved rose. I have some rose water here, some rose oil. I have some corn for prosperity. I have shells from beaches and places that I was with my grandparents. I have candies. I have all these amazing, beautiful gum leaves from Australia where I grew up, and I keep these pressed. And I put these down here every year. And I add tea. I have a teacup here with actually some rowan berries and some tobacco for my medicine lineages as well. So I honor my ancestors in my medicine lineages as well. So this is just a beautiful way to really develop that intimacy with your ancestors. And I encourage it, if you can. If you don't know who your ancestors are, but you have a feeling, or you know the lands that they're from, See if you can find out the foods that would be connected, and just add some food every day. And in many traditions this is done because the ancestors eat the energy of the food as a way of enjoying once again the deliciousness of being embodied. And then once you're finished with those offerings of food, you can just return them to Mother Earth and she will compost them for you. So many, many Samhain blessings for you as we head into the dark half of the year. I'll post a blog soon about how to embrace the dark. And I just encourage you to go to my website, angelaprada.com, if you want to learn more about this spiritual living and the path of Animistic Soul Medicine and Animistic Folk Medicine. And it's a real joy to share it with you. So be well.